Hey, this is Josh from Gamers Hunt, and I'm going to do a little deck tech for you guys. I'm going to talk to you about my Go-Shintai of Life's Origin deck. It's 5-color Pillow Fort, Control, Enchantress, Shrine deck. So let's get at it. So first, the commander, Go-Shintai of Life's Origin. He's got basically two abilities. He's got an activated ability and a triggered ability. And the activated ability is Wooburg and tap it, and you can return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. A lot of people are using that to use things like Entomb and Omniscience to reanimate big high power enchantments and stuff like that. And we're not doing that. His triggered ability, we're just using the activated ability to recur enchantments when people try to remove them, which they will try to do because some of them are really strong. So it's a great way to get those back. His triggered ability is whenever Go-Shintai of Life's Origin or another non-token shrine enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 colorless shrine enchantment creature token. The gist of the deck is we're going to try to abuse that second ability to make... the way shrines work generally is they count the number of shrines you have, and their power is amplified by how many shrines you have. They all care about having lots of shrines. So this guy is going to allow us to have more and more shrines than we normally would. So in addition to Go-Shintai of Life's Origins, the deck is playing all the shrines. So let's get those and look at them. The first one, we've got all 5 of the Hondens from the original Champions Kamigawa set. And we're, spoiler alert, we're running every single shrine. So the Hondens all have abilities. So you see they trigger at the beginning of your upkeep, and they all count the number of shrines you have, and then they do something like Cleansing Fire does, you gain 2 life for each shrine you control, or you draw a card for each shrine you control, or your target opponent discards a card for each shrine you control. That's kind of mean. We're not really trying to do that. We just want to play all the shrines, and it's good to get rid of somebody that's going to be a problem. Like somebody's trying to win. It's good to strip them to their hand, I guess. I really don't like to play cards that make everybody discard their whole hand, particularly just one person. It's just not that fun. And then we have Hondens of Life's Web, which is going to put spirits into play for every shrine we control, and that'll get out of hand. And we have some stuff to amplify on that and use that as a win con later. And Infinite Rage will deal damage to target creature or player equals the number of shrines you control. So that one can be a win con too. Really, these two are going to be, out of the Honden cycle of shrines, the two that are going to be the most powerful win cons. Obviously, Honden of Seeing Winds is extremely powerful too, but it's a little dangerous because it's not a May, and it's not hard to imagine scenarios where we deck ourselves in a few turns. And this deck plays pretty slow. It's like a mid-power deck, and it's intending to play a long game. And over, if we have 8 shrines in play, it's not going to be very long, turn after turn, before we've decked ourselves. And all of our win cons that we're going to find are also going to take time to build out. That's why we're playing Pillow Fort. So that's the Hondens. In M21, we got another cycle of shrines. We got these sanctums. Again, there's one for every color, but this time we also got a 5-color one. And these are all sort of different. Some of them have activated abilities. Some of them have triggered things that happen on our pre-combat main phase. One has the Sanctum of All triggers on our upkeep. There's a lot of triggers we're gonna have to keep up with in this deck. But again, a lot of them are pretty powerful. Sanctum of Calm Waters is going to let us draw a bunch of cards again, but this one's a May, so it's a little more controllable, and I love it. Sanctum of Tranquil Light is not that great, but it only costs 1 mana, so it'll give us more shrines. And then Sanctum of Shattered Heights is going to let us just discard a land card and its creature or planeswalker removal, for 1, which is really good. All of our cards become removal then. Sanctum of Fruitful Harvest gives us a ton of mana. Sanctum of Stone Fangs is one of our best win cons because it's going to count shrines and then drain our opponents for how many shrines we have. And then Sanctum of All, on our upkeep, we can search for our graveyard or our library and get a shrine and put it into play. And then if any shrine we control triggers, then if we control 6 or more shrines, and we probably do, that trigger triggers an additional time, which also includes Go-Shintai of Life's Origin, giving us an additional shrine token, or Sanctum of Stone Fangs draining everybody, things like that. All those triggers are going to be doubled by Sanctum of All. Sanctum of All is fantastic. And then finally, the new Kamigawa Neon Dynasty set has given us a new set of 5 shrines, 1 for each color, all called Go-Shintai of blank. These are all creatures. They all have some sort of typical creature ability like vigilance or flying or something like that. And then they all have abilities that trigger at the beginning of our end step, and they require you to pay 1 mana to get that ability. Shared Purpose gives us spirit tokens for each shrine we control. Lost Wisdom mills, and we don't really care about that, but we're going to play it just because we want more shrines. Hidden Cruelty is removal again, so that's great. Ancient Wars will deal damage to players or planeswalkers, so that's another potential win con. And then Balanced Vigor is going to put +1/+1 counters on stuff. So it's not impossible to give Go-Shintai of Life's Origins a bunch of +1/+1 counters and get in there with commander damage. He's a 3/4 to start with, and it's not going to be hard to put 4 or 5 or more counters on him every turn with Go-Shintai of Balanced Vigor. So that's decent. So then we've got this little Enchantress package. So we've got all the good Enchantresses. They all basically do the same thing, just for different amounts of mana, and some have like a little bonus. But they all, when you cast an enchantment spell, you draw a card. Sithis Harvest Hand also gains us life, and Argothian Enchantress also has Shroud. But otherwise, the Enchantresses are all the same. You cast an enchantment and you draw a card. We're going to cast a ton of enchantments. The rest of our deck is packed with them. The shrines are all enchantments. Our commander's enchantment. So this is our main card draw engine. Some of the Enchantress-y cards also have an ability called Constellation. And Constellation, which started in the original Theros block, means that when an enchantment enters the battlefield, a thing happens. So unlike the Enchantress cards, we don't have to cast it. And that means that if we blink Go-Shintai of Life's Origins, or just when his trigger puts an enchantment token into play, these will trigger. Citizen Champion and Eidolon of Blossoms both work like Enchantress cards, so they'll draw us cards when enchantments enter the battlefield. So if I have Go-Shintai of Life's Origin in play and I cast a shrine and I get a token, then I put the shrine and the shrine token into play, and I'll draw 2 cards. Fantastic. These are better than the Enchantresses. Eidolon of Blossoms costs 1 more, but she's going to draw your card when she comes into play too. Also with Constellation is Doomwake Giant, who's a big 4/6 for 5, but his Constellation triggers when an enchantment enters the battlefield. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 till end of turn. So it's going to be easy for us to, typically it seems to be that we'll -3/-3 our opponent's creatures in a given turn with Doomwake Giant. We can go a little higher than that. It's going to be harder, but -3/-3 every turn is going to do a lot towards being a one-sided board wipe that keeps us alive. Then we're running 2 of the gods from the old Theros set, and I guess the new Theros set too. Thassa Deep Dwelling is cool. Neither of these are ever going to probably fill their devotion, so they're never going to be creatures. Thassa Deep Dwelling is going to let us blink something every turn, and we want to do that with Go-Shintai of Life's Origins or one of the other Go-Shintai when our commander's in play, because then we get that shrine comes back into play, triggers Go-Shintai of Life's Origins, and we get to get another shrine token. It's also great if people do things like put Song of Dryads or Darksteel Mutation or something like that on our commander, or do something to neutralize our commander on the board. We can just blink it back so it protects it. Then Perforos, God of the Forge, will, every time a creature enters the battlefield, it'll do 2 damage to each opponent, and that'll be our shrine tokens. It'll be our creature shrines, the Go-Shintai shrines, And it'll be all those spirit tokens that those shrines, the green shrines, are making. The ones that are made by Honden of Life's Web, the Go-Shintai of, you'd think, oh no, Go-Shintai of Shared Purpose. So those two are going to make tons of spirits, and so that makes Perforos one of our win cons. That way we can just sit there, make tokens, and kill our opponents. And when Thassa blinks Go-Shintai of Life's Origins, that's going to be 4 damage every time that happens to everybody. Perforos seems good. They're also enchantments, so they're going to trigger all of our enchantress cards. Then we've got a suite of sort of ghostly prison propaganda Pillfort cards. The best one is Sphere of Safety, because they all do the same thing. They make it so creatures can't attack unless that creature's controller pays some amount of mana. In most cases, it's 2. With Collective Restraint, it cares about the number of basic land types you control. That's the number. And in Sphere of Safety, it's the number of enchantments you control, which is going to be tons. Played games where you have to pay 16 for each creature that attacks me, and it's not doable. So these make it very difficult to get through any damage and are going to protect us since we're playing a long game. We've also got a couple more. Elephant Grass does the same thing, but black creatures can't attack us at all. The downside is it has a cumulative upkeep, so it probably won't stick around super long because we're going to need our mana. No Mercy, creatures can attack us, but if they do damage to us, we destroy it. So that still is incentivizing people not to attack. They should just attack somebody else. The only tutors in the deck are tutors that get us enchantments. I'm trying to make it not super high powered. I like to have decks that play at different power levels so that I can accommodate my opponents and we can play at the level that people want to play at. Here we've got Idyllic Tutor, which gets an enchantment and puts it in your hand, and Enlightened Tutor, which at instant speed gets an enchantment and puts it on top of your library. They're both great, and they're both going to help us find our win conditions, or even some removal and protection pieces that we have that are enchantments. Protecting our board is going to be really important. A lot of our enchantments are threats. So Sterling Grove is going to give all of our enchantments Shroud. That's going to include our commander. It's going to include our Pillfort cards. It's going to include the shrines that are our win cons. So it's amazing. We can pay 1 and sack it to search for enchantment and put that card on top of our library. So it's also like an Enlightened Tutor. And if we do that, if it's safe to do that, to put our shields down for a second, we can use Go-Shintai of Life's Origins ability to pay Wooburg and tap it to bring it back into play from our graveyard. So we can do that multiple times if it's safe to do that. Teferi's Protection is really important because we're not really susceptible to board wipes, but Cyclonic Rift is going to wreck us. So Teferi's Protection will protect us from Cyclonic Rift, and it'll protect us from our opponents trying to do something to win the game, because it'll keep us from being able to take any damage. Our life total can't change, protection from everything, and all of our permanents phase out. But our protection package also includes counter magic, not a ton of it, just 4 little pieces. We've got Fierce Guardianship because our commander is always going to be in play. We're really reliant on our commander, so we have to protect him. Muddle the Mixture, which will help us search for things like Sterling Grove or Sanctum of Shattered Fangs, so we can go get protection or win cons if we need to, but it also is a counterspell. Dovin's Veto and counterspell obviously are also, all this is just to protect us. We're not trying to keep our opponents from doing stuff unless that stuff is going to mess up our plan. Then we've got our sort of instant speed removal so we can interact with things. This is all fairly standard. Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile are just super efficient creature removal that are exiling instead of destroying. Generous Gift and Beast Within do the same thing. They destroy a permanent and replace it with an elephant, so it's versatile because it hits permanents instead of just creatures. And then Assassin's Trophy and Anguished Unmaking are also versatile in that they're going to get rid of permanents for us that are a problem and not just creatures. They have drawbacks, like you lose life or they get a land, but that's fine. Then we've got some enchantments that double as removal because we can cast these and they'll also trigger our Enchantress cards and draw us cards. And we can search for them with Enlightened Tutor and things like that. But the cool thing about all these is they're gonna neutralize our opponent's commanders. They'll turn them into an insect, or they'll phase them out, or they're a land now. They're going to still be in play. They don't change zones, so they can't move them back to their command zone and recast them. They're just out of the game, right? So until they find enchantment removal, and maybe we'll give these things Shroud too, and we can protect them. These are going to be keys to helping disrupt our opponents who rely heavily on their commanders. They're going to let us keep from losing to things that we couldn't otherwise deal with from other people's command zones. Just a few board wipes. Cyclonic Rift and Dam are particularly versatile. Dam, I often use it just to remove one creature. Cyclonic Rift, I'll often bounce just one thing. Extinguish All Hope and Ruinous Ultimatum are both one-sided. Extinguish All Hope destroys all non-enchantment creatures, so that's not going to kill very many things of ours except for some enchantresses. And then Ruinous Ultimatum will destroy all the non-land permanents that aren't ours. So it's a blowout card. I use Cyclonic Rift in this deck defensively most of the time. It's not an offensive Cyclonic Rift, but it's just to keep somebody from running me over. We've got the sort of green sorcery ramp that you usually see. Nature's Lore in 3 visits, and Farseek will go fetch. In our case, they're going to go get Triomes, and we'll talk about the mana base in a minute. Wild Growth will enchant a land, so it's going to trigger our Enchantress cards, and it'll make it tap for an additional green. And then Cultivate and Kodama's Reach also fix our mana while fetching a basic into play and one to our hand. So, I mean, they're great. This mana base, our mana base isn't like very... it's a 5-color mana base, but it's not like super optimized. So these are going to help us smooth that out. We're not set on having Wooburg, and most of the time our colors are pretty forgiving, just like 1 pip. And our commander just costs green and some colorless, but we still want to be able to get all of our colors, and these are going to help us do that. And then the rest of our ramp is Soul Ring, of course, and then Chromatic Lantern is going to smooth our mana base out and make it sort of land tap for any color. Dryad of Elysian Grove is going to do the same thing and let us play an additional land each turn. And this is, again, these are just helping us not have to go to break the bank on the mana base for a 5-color deck. Sorry about the glare on the sleeves. Already you see that we're playing a pretty cheap mana base, relatively speaking, 5 colors with 10 basic lands. I honestly, like, part of what inspired me to build the deck was seeing these basic lands. I wanted a deck that would be a home for them when they were spoiled, and I love them. It's not an aesthetic I usually generally go for, but these are just beautiful to me, so they're in here. We've got these are like the only 3 any color lands. Exotic Orchard will usually do most of what we need to do. Reflecting Pool will usually be 5 colors. Command Tower is 5 colors. And these are our fetches. We've got Fabled Passage and Evolving Wilds on the lower end, and then Prismatic Vista is kind of expensive. But again, these are just going to get basics, and that works fine in this deck. Just grabbing basics is fine. We are running all 5 Triomes. When the next set, New Capina or whatever it's called, sorry if I mispronounced it, when that next set comes out, we get 5 more Triomes, and so it may make sense to update the mana base with some of those. If I did, I would prioritize the ones that are green. The deck leans really heavy on green, and after that white, so those are the colors that I would prioritize getting if I were going to change the mana base some. I've always loved these check lands ever since, as long as they've been around. You know, I just kind of, for the most part, built this with the lands that I had. The check lands are great because we're playing so many basic lands, and then we have the Triomes. So these usually aren't going to come into play tapped. They're usually fine. They're like dual lands. We don't play fetch lands, so we can't fetch them anyway, so that doesn't matter. They're not super expensive, and for the most part, these are like one of our best dual land options on like a moderate budget. And then since we're green-white, threw in the Overgrown Farmland from Midnight Hunt. Those are our main colors. And then I just happen to have these Battle Bond lands that care about the number of opponents you have. So they're in here filling a gap, and they're great. Like this mana base, because we have things like Nature's Lore and Cultivate, and then we have things, all these ways to like fetch our lands out of our deck. We have the Triomes, we have the check lands. Our mana base is fine. I've had no issue just having a pretty simple mana base. And then last, we've got just a little bit of utility. Yavimaya Cradle of Growth is fixing our mana some more. We're mostly a green deck, so making every land a forest is good. We're reliant on our commander, so Command Beacon, if people kill it too many times because we can't protect it, lets us bypass commander tax. And then Hall of Heliod's Generosity lets us recur enchantments from our graveyard back into our library, on top of our library. And sometimes it'll be cheaper to cast them than to reanimate them with Go-Shintai of Life's Origin or something like that. That's the deck. I've played it 3 or 4 times. It's done well. Usually when we're having the Rule 0 conversation, I say that this is I describe the deck. I say it's a mid-power Enchantress Shrine Pillowfort deck. My opponents should play decks that are mid-power, and they should play decks that have lots of ways to remove or deal with enchantments, or they're gonna find it to be a little unbalanced. And I'm all about having those conversations and having balanced games. The deck's super fun. It's like you're always doing something interesting. You have to pay attention to the game because you're playing a bit of a control deck. People are threatening you and you can deal with it. You have answers to a lot of the problems that the game is going to pose. And yeah, it's just been a blast. If you want to build a 5-color deck that's not just like your typical Kinrith deck or like a 5-color Dragons deck or something like that, and I'm not knocking that. I've got a 5-color Dragons deck that I love. It's my favorite deck. This is like a good way to get into it and play something that's kind of different and fun. And you get to play with a lot of the new cards from Kamigawa and Neon Dynasty. So yeah, I'd just encourage you, if you want to build it, we're going to put the link to my deck list in the description. You can just build that, or you can go off of that for ideas, and I'll change it as I change the deck over time, so check back in with it if you want to. And then talk to Charlotte at Gamers Haunt or wherever your friendly local game store is. You can build this deck yourself. Thanks for sticking with me and hearing about this cool new deck, and happy gaming.